The city has a pulse. You learn that, after enough years on the pavement. It's not the bright, steady beat of the brochures, the one they sell to the tourists and the fresh-faced kids from the suburbs. It's a wet, sucking sound, like a lung half filled with water. It's the sound of alleys that smell like rust and old secrets, of neon signs bleeding onto rain-slicked asphalt, a desperate, weeping red that promises warmth but only delivers a cold, electric hum. This is my city, and it was drowning. My name is Detective Elias Thorne. My world is a 10 by 12-foot apartment that smells like stale coffee and regret. It's a precinct that smells like burnt coffee and fear. And it's a city that, well, the city smells like the end of the world. It smells like the lingering, sweet sick perfume of the black rose case, the one that got away, the one that ate my career and my soul, leaving just this husk. The black rose file is still in a box under my bed. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I can hear it breathing. The call came at 3:17 a.m. A signal 10 to 5, officer down. Those are the calls that scrape the sleep from your eyes and replace it with ice. We found Officer Patrick Miller, 24th Precinct, in his cruiser. He hadn't crashed. He was parked neatly by the curb in the warehouse district, the glow of his dashcam painting the scene in a sickly, silent green. The rain was so fine it was almost mist, clinging to everything, making the world look like an old, blurred photograph. The first thing that hits you isn't the body. It's the absence, the silence where a voice should be. Miller was slumped against the wheel. No struggle, no frantic radio call. His coffee, still warm on the passenger seat, steamed gently in the cold. A single drop of rain trickled down the inside of the windshield, tracing a path across his face. The dashcam footage, which we'd watch later, was just silence. 23 minutes of silence, the rhythmic thwack-thwack of the wipers, and then the sound of the glass exploding. No car, no flash, just death from the dark. I'm Detective Elias Thorne. My partner, Marcus Rivington, was already there, his trench coat collar pulled up, his face grim under the strobe of the blue and reds. Mark was the last good man in the city. Polished shoes, a handshake that meant something, pictures of his kids taped to his monitor. He was the anchor in my storm, the one piece of this broken place that still made sense. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder, a gesture of solidarity I'd come to depend on more than my next breath. "It's clean, Eli," he murmured. His voice was always steady, a low rumble that cut through the chaos. Too clean. He was right. One shot, through the supposedly bullet-resistant glass. A perfect, spider-webbed hole just above the steering wheel. A .308, maybe, from a distance. This wasn't a junkie. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was an execution. "The glass," I said, touching the rim of the hole. "This was a professional." "A professional," Mark agreed, his breath fogging. "Or a damn good marksman. Who hated a beat cop this much?" That was the question. Miller was a kid, 24 years old. By all accounts, a good one. He wrote tickets. He calmed down domestic disputes. He bought coffee for the homeless. He was the before picture in the Academy recruitment poster. The top brass, led by Captain Davis, descended on the scene like crows in cheap suits. Davis, a man who saw the world in headlines and budget cuts, was already spinning. "This is an attack on the city," he boomed, his jowls shaking. "On all of us. This is an act of war. I want a city-wide canvas. I want every sea flipped, every rock turned over." Mark and I just watched. We knew what a canvas in this neighborhood would get us. Nothing. The warehouses were blind, their windows painted over. The rain was already washing away the evidence. The city was already swallowing the secret. Back at the precinct, a place I call the precinct of shadows, the air was thick and sour. Fluorescent lights hummed a funeral dirge over the gray cubicles. We stared at the fresh murder board. One picture, Pat Miller, smiling in his Academy blues. "No witnesses," Mark said, tossing a cold file on my desk. "Alleys are empty. No surveillance catches the shot. The shooter's a ghost." "Ghosts don't use a .308, I said, rubbing my eyes. The coffee tasted like ashes. "Maybe this one does." My desk phone rang. It was my Jinx. His voice was a raw whisper, like gravel in a blender. Thorn? Man, I heard about the cop. The kid. I gotta lay low, man. This ain't right. What's not right? Jinx, what do you know? I don't know nothing. He yelped, too quickly. I saw Miller's cruiser 'bout an hour before. He wasn't on patrol, man. He was waiting, like for a meet. This whole block's dead. Why's he waiting here? A meet? With who? The line clicked dead. Jinx was running. I told Mark. He frowned. A meet? A C? Miller was too green for that. Maybe not a C, I said. Maybe something off book. Before we could start, my other phone rang. The one I keep for just one person. Isabel Vance, the sister of the Black Rose victim. I hadn't spoken to her in a year, not since I'd officially been pulled off her sister's case. I let it ring. Mark looked at me. The ghost? He asked, his voice soft. Yeah, I said, silencing the call. The ghost. The first 48 hours blurred into a haze of bad coffee, dead-end leads, and the hollow, echoing silence of the squad room. Every cop was looking over their shoulder. The pulse of the city had changed. It was no longer a gasp. It was a whisper, a threat. We went to see Miller's widow. A small, tidy house in a neighborhood too expensive for a cop's salary. Mark handled it. He was good at that, the human part of the job. Sarah Miller was young, pale, and 6 months pregnant. She sat on a couch wrapped in a crocheted afghan, her eyes vacant. He was a good man, Sarah, Mark said, his voice a soft, empathetic rumble. I helped train him. He was like a little brother. She just nodded, twisting a tissue. He was working so much. Special assignment, he said. For Captain Grant. Said it was important. Grant? I asked, perking up. My old mentor. What kind of assignment? He wouldn't say. Just that it was going to set us up, that we wouldn't have to worry. Her eyes drifted to the garage. I followed her gaze. Sarah, what was he working on? I don't know, she snapped, tears welling. He changed. He got quiet. He got scared. We'll take care of you, Sarah, Mark said, standing up, placing a hand on her shoulder. The department. I will make sure you're taken care of. I just stood by the window, watching the rain. I wasn't built for that kind of comfort. I was built for the morgue, for the shadows. I saw a framed photo on the mantle. Miller, Mark, and my old mentor, Captain Grant, on a fishing boat. All of them smiling, holding up a stupidly large fish. A family. As we left, I saw the brand new sports car in the garage, half covered by a tarp. A car Miller couldn't have afforded. Poor kid, Mark said in the car, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Leaves a pregnant wife for a damn paycheck. Yeah, I said, thinking of the car. Poor kid. Special assignment, for Grant. Grant's a straight arrow, Eli. You know that. Miller was probably just exaggerating. Maybe, I said. But I was thinking about Jinx. A secret meet. A special assignment. A new sports car. It was a cocktail I knew too well. 4 days later, the second body dropped. This time, the silence was louder. The victim wasn't a beat cop. It was Detective Michael Karras, Internal Affairs. We found him in his high-rise apartment. The kind of place that's supposed to be safe. Keycard entry. A doorman, concrete walls. Karras had been a man who believed in walls. He was in his home office, slumped over a mahogany desk. But this was no clean, distant shot. This was different. This is rage, Mark said, standing in the doorway. He wouldn't come further in. He looked almost green. The scene was a violation. The walls were covered in something, not words, smeared symbols. The murder weapon was a heavy, crystal desk award, used repeatedly. The place smelled of copper and ozone, and something else, bleach. Karras wasn't popular, I said, cataloging the scene in my head. Cops never are. This isn't unpopular, Eli, Mark said, his voice tight. This is hatred. This is biblical, or staged to look that way, I murmured, sniffing the air. The bleach was strong, too strong. It wasn't a cleanup. It was a statement. Karras was the department's boogeyman. He was the man who looked for the rot. He'd taken down dirty cops, sure, but he'd also ruined careers over minor infractions. He was a Puritan in a city of sinners. Captain Davis was pale. This was a cop killing a cop. That's what the scene screamed. Lock it down, Davis ordered, his voice a tremor. Nobody talks to the press. This does not leak. Thorne, Rivington, my office. Now, the office was dim, the blinds drawn against the city. Davis looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Karras was investigating something big, he said, not looking at us. He wouldn't tell me what. He just said, the rot is structural. Structural rot? Mark leaned forward. What's that mean? The unions? The brass? It means, I said, that he was looking at us. Davis threw a file on the desk. He was looking at organized crime, specifically, Viktor Volkov. He thought Volkov had someone on the inside, someone high up. Viktor Volkov. The name hung in the air like cigar smoke. Volkov ran the docks, the unions, and half the city council. He was untouchable, wrapped in layers of lawyers and offshore accounts. So we think Volkov had Karras and Miller killed? I asked. It felt wrong. Why Miller? Why in that way? The two murders are night and day. One's a sniper, one's a bloodbath. Maybe Miller saw something he shouldn't have, Mark offered. A deal going down. Karras was the real target. Miller was just cleanup. Or, Davis said, the killer wants us to think they're disconnected. He's playing with us. Go see Volkov. Rattle his cage. See what falls out. As we left, we almost ran into Detective Lena Petrova, from the 12th. Ambitious, data-driven, and had all the warmth of a server farm. Detectives, she said, not quite looking at us. Captain, I'm being detailed to the task force. My analysts are already crunching the cell data from the Miller scene. Mark smiled, a politician's smile. Good to have you, Petrova. We're about to pay a visit to Mr. Volkov. Volkov? She scoffed. You're chasing dinosaurs, detective. The data doesn't point to OC. It points to nothing. A black hole. Which is more interesting. The killer in the Miller case used no phone. The killer in the Karras case, he was in the building for 3 hours. Does that sound like a rage killing to you? She walked past us, all sharp angles and the faint smell of antiseptic. I don't like her, Mark muttered. She's a distraction, I said. Let's go see the dinosaur. Viktor Volkov's office was a penthouse club that overlooked the entire, glittering city. He was a small man in an impeccable suit, surrounded by men who looked like they were carved from granite. Detectives, he smiled, not getting up. To what do I owe the pleasure? I hear you are having staffing issues. Downtown. Officer Miller. Detective Karras, I said, putting their photos on his table. He didn't look at them. Tragic. The risks of your profession. We hear Karras was looking into you, Mark said, playing the bad cop. He never really was. We hear you had a man on the inside. Volkov chuckled. A dry, papery sound. Detective, I have many men on the inside. I have men in the sanitation department, in the port authority, in the mayor's office. It's the cost of doing business. He leaned in, his eyes like polished stones. But I do not kill police, he whispered. It's bad for business. It's messy, uncivilized. This violence, this is not me. This is personal. He picked up Karras's photo. This man. He was not looking for a rat, detective. He was the rat. He didn't just investigate cops. He used what he found. Blackmail. Favors. He was more of a businessman than I am. And Miller? I pressed. Volkov shrugged, handing the photo back. I don't know your beat cop. But I'll tell you this, Detective Thorne. You're a man who chases ghosts. I remember the Black Rose. You were so sure, so passionate. But you never found her killer, did you? The system. It failed. You're still looking in the wrong place. This is a family matter. The drive back was silent. The rain had started again, heavy and cold. He's lying, Mark said, staring out the window. Is he? I said, the Black Rose comment stinging like a fresh slap. Karras as a blackmailer. It makes sense. It explains the rage. The victim of his blackmail finally snaps. So who's the victim? Mark said. He had files on half the department. This is a haystack of suspects. And it still doesn't explain Miller. Unless, I said, the thought forming like a shard of ice in my gut, Miller wasn't the first. Karras wasn't the second. They're just the ones we found. What if Karras was blackmailing another dirty cop? And that cop is our killer? A cop like Miller. Mark looked at me, his face a mask in the shadows. Miller? The kid? You saw that sports car, too. I did. A cop. Killing cops, Mark said, testing the weight of it. You really think that's where this goes, Eli? Volkov said it. I replied, the wipers beating a slow, hypnotic rhythm. It's a family matter. That night, I went to my apartment and dug the black rose file out from under my bed. The perfume-like smell of the evidence bag was faint, but it was still there. I spread the old photos out on my kitchen table. The victim, Sarah Vance. The scene, the lost evidence report, and the prime suspect, a slick sociopath named Julian Mercer, who'd walked. My ghost phone rang. Isabel Vance. This time, I answered. He's dead, she said. Her voice was flat. No hello. Who's dead, Isabel? Karras. I saw it on the news. He was one of them, wasn't he? One of the ones who let Mercer walk. Karras wasn't on the case, I said, my voice weary. He was internal affairs, Elias. He was the one who investigated the lost evidence and ruled it a clerical error. He was part of it. Now he's dead. Now Miller, the rookie, he's dead too. Someone is doing your job. Isabel, don't talk like that, I said, a cold dread rising. Where are you? I'm just watching, like you should be. Who's next, Elias? Grant? Fincher? They're all on the list. The line went dead. A list. My blood ran cold. Isabel Vance, the grieving sister, had just become my new prime suspect. The third victim was Captain Grant, my old mentor. They found him on his fishing boat, 20 miles offshore. He'd been missing for 2 days. This one broke me. Grant was the man who'd handed me my badge. He was old school, a dinosaur of whiskey and gut feelings. He was the one who'd partnered me with Mark, said we'd balance each other out. The murder was the same as Miller's. A single, high-powered rifle shot. From where? Another boat? The shore? The precinct was a morgue. The precinct of shadows had finally lived up to its name. Cops weren't just scared. They were furious. I didn't go to the archives. I went to Grant's office. It was quiet, the blinds drawn. I sat in his chair. It still smelled like him. Pipe tobacco and peppermint. I remembered him handing me my badge. You're a good man, Thorne, he'd said. Don't let this place turn you into anything else. He'd failed. Or I had. I found an open file on his desk. Not a case file. A personnel file. Karras's. And underneath it, a cold case file. The Black Rose. Grant had been looking at them both. He knew they were connected. Mark found me there, 3 days into a sleepless binge. Eli, you need to go home, he said, gently. Home? I laughed, a dry, empty sound. This is home, Mark. This is all that's left. I know he was. I know, Mark said, his voice heavy with a shared grief. He was a good man, Eli. Was he? I snapped, turning on him, holding up the files. He was looking at Karras. He was looking at the Black Rose. He told me to drop that case. He said it was cold. What if he was covering for someone? Isabel Vance. She thinks he was. Mark's face hardened. Isabel? You're talking to her? Eli, she's poison. She's a civilian obsessed with a cold case. She's not a suspect. She's a problem. Don't let her get in your head. He gently took another file from the pile. What's this? Kurtish, I said, distracted. Frank, Rhino, Kurtish. Disgraced ex-cop. Grant was his training officer. Karras was the one who got him kicked off the force for corruption. Kurtish threatened to burn them all down. Mark's eyes lit up. Where is he now? Fell off the grid, I said. Works, security, for low-level thugs. He's a ghost. Then let's go ghost hunting, Mark said, a new, hard energy in his voice. This is it, Eli. This is the guy. He's got motive for Karras. He's got motive for Grant. Miller must have pulled him over, seen something. Kurtish panics, kills him. It all fits. It did fit. It was neat. It was tidy. It was everything I should have wanted in a suspect. Before we could move, a new body dropped. This one broke the pattern. Martin Fincher, a defense attorney. The Rat, we called him. He was famous for getting dirty cops and mobsters acquitted on razor-thin technicalities. He was leaving his club when his car exploded. A bomb. A pro job. It's Volkov, Davis screamed in the briefing room. He's cleaning house. Kara's, Grant, now his own lawyer. He's tying up loose ends. This Kurdish thing is a distraction. Get me Volkov. But Mark was shaking his head. No, Captain. This is Kurdish. Fincher. Fincher was Kurtish's lawyer. The one who botched his defense. This is revenge. Kurdish is going after everyone who ever wronged him. Grant, Kara's, Fincher. It's a spree. Miller was just wrong place, wrong time. Mark's logic was compelling. It tied everything together. But Isabel's voice was in my head. Grant, Fincher, they're all on the list. I went to the archives, to the boneyard, to talk to Finch. Alistair Finch Finnegan. He was a detective before I was born, and now he was the keeper of the paper ghosts. Kurdish, Fincher, Grant, Karras, Finch murmured, his fingers dancing over the yellowed files. You're not looking at a spree, Elias. You're looking at a house cleaning. And Fincher. Fincher wasn't just Kurtish's lawyer. He was the Black Rose's lawyer. The one who got the case tossed on that lost piece of evidence. My blood went cold. What evidence? A bloody glove, Finch said, not looking up. Found at the scene. Disappeared from the evidence room. The arresting officer. Let's see. A rookie. Name of Rivington. And his training officer. Grant. It was all tidy. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mark lost the evidence? Papers get lost, Elias. It happens. But you were the one who wouldn't let it go. You were the one Grant had to pull off the case. Because you were getting close. I walked out of the archives in a daze. Mark, Grant, Fincher, the Black Rose. Petrova found us in the hall. Kurdish, you're chasing a washed-up thug? The data on the Karras murder shows an anomaly. The killer was in the building for 2 hours before the murder, and 1 hour after. It wasn't a rage killing. It was a cleansing. Meticulous. The rage was faked. Stage. And you know this from your charts? Mark said, his voice dripping with condescension. I know it from the water usage in Karras's apartment, she said, her eyes flat. The killer took a shower. A long one. Does that sound like a biblical rage killer to you, detective? And the Fincher bomb? That's military grade. Kurdish can't even make toast. I'm running a different angle. Financials. This isn't a psycho. This is a corporation. Or a military unit. You're being led, Thorne. The question is, by who? She walked away, leaving us in a stunned silence. She's smart, I said, my voice hollow. She's a pest, Mark said. And she's wrong. Kurdish is our guy. I can feel it. We spent a week hunting Kurdish. We kicked indoors. We leaned on Sis. We tore the underbelly of the city apart. I was looking for Kurdish, but I was also looking for Jinx. He'd vanished. And I was looking for Isabel Vance. She'd gone to ground. Her apartment was empty. On her desk, she'd left a list. Grant, Karras, Fincher, Miller, and 2 more names. Elena Rosales, and Marcus Rivington. My heart hammered in my chest. Mark? Why was Mark on her list? I found Jinx first. In a flophouse, dead. An overdose. The needle was still in his arm. But Jinx didn't use. He was a meth head. He hated needles. Looks like our COD, Mark said, his voice flat. He'd met me there. Told you this life would catch up to him. He didn't use, Mark, I said, my voice thick. They all say that, till they do, Eli. One less loose end. Now let's focus. We got a good tip on Kurdish. I felt sick. Then, a new call. A different one. An explosion at a downtown law office. Not Fincher's. A different one. But the bomb was a dud. A survivor. The target was a woman named Elena Rosales, a public defender. The next name on Isabel's list. She was shaking, but alive. I found a note. She stammered, handing me a piece of paper. It was in my mail this morning. The judge is watching. You failed to protect the innocent. Now, you will be judged. It's about the Black Rose case, she whispered. I was the junior defense. I did what Fincher told me. We knew he was guilty. Mark was by my side. She's just a scared lawyer, Eli. It's Isabel. She's cleaning house. She's our killer. Kurtish must be a distraction. His theory. It shifted. Just like that. From Kurtish to Isabel. Seamlessly. No, I said, looking at the note. This is something else. This is the killer. We found Frank Kurtish holed up in a derelict brewery on the city's east side. The tip was anonymous. Mark said it was good intel. But I thought we were on Isabel? I said, confused. We take Kurtish, Mark said, his voice hard. He's part of it. Maybe Isabel's partner. Maybe her muscle. We take him, we get her. The department was desperate for a win. Davis gave us the full SWAT backup. The green tsunami. It was midnight. The rain had turned to a freezing, miserable sleet. He's in there, Mark said, his voice tight over the comms. Armed and paranoid. They say he's been talking to himself. Saying they framed him. We go in quiet, I said. I want to take him alive, Mark. I need to know why. We'll do our best, Eli. But this guy, he's a cornered animal. You know how that ends. The brewery was a maze of rusted vats and crumbling catwalks. The air smelled like mold and decay. We found him on the 3rd floor, near the old boiling tanks. A shadow in the dark. Kurtish, I yelled, my voice echoing. This is Thorne. We just want to talk. Liars. A voice screamed back, raw and terrified. You're all liars. You're here to finish it. He sent you. Who sent us? Frank. I said, moving slowly, keeping my light on the ground. The one who set me up. The one who knows. He's one of you. A shot pinged off the metal vat behind me. Then all hell broke loose. SWAT opened up. The air filled with the deafening, concussive bang of automatic fire. Hold your fire. I screamed. Hold your fire. Kurtish was screaming, firing blind. He was on a high catwalk, silhouetted against a broken window. He's got a bead on you, Eli. Mark yelled, pushing me down, providing cover fire. Frank, I yelled again. They were dirty. Grant and Karras. They deserved it, right? Is that it? Tell me, and I'll help you. He stopped firing. The silence was absolute. You know? Kurtish's voice was a broken whisper. You know what they were? I know, I lied. Tell me who else. Who was helping them? It wasn't me. He sobbed. I took the money, yeah. But he was the one. He's the one who promised. He said he'd cleanse the record. He called himself the judge. Who? Frank. Who is the judge? Kurtish stood up, dropping his weapon. He was illuminated in the single beam of my flashlight. It's a single, sharp PFFT from my right. Not a SWAT rifle. A suppressed pistol. Kurtish folded. He didn't scream. He just fell. A long, sickening second, and then a wet, final thud on the concrete below. Silence. I looked at Mark. He was lowering his weapon. He had another gun, Eli, Mark said, his voice shaking. Tucked in his waistband. He was going for it. He was aiming at you. The SWAT team converged. It was over. The case was closed. Frank Kurtish, the cop killer, was dead. The department celebrated. The press called us heroes. Davis handed out commendations. They held a wake for the fallen at Sullivan's. It was loud and drunk, and full of cops telling lies about how brave they were. Mark was holding court, a beer in his hand, a hero's glow on his face. He'd saved my life. Petrova was in a corner, nursing a club soda, her face like thunder. She caught my eye and walked over. You're a fool, Thorne, she whispered, her voice low and sharp. You're their hero. You just killed the only man who could have given us the real killer. He had a gun, Petrova. He had an empty holster and a death wish. My team pulled his financials. He was paid $50,000, 2 days ago, from an offshore account. He wasn't a killer. He was a patsy. He was paid to be here, to die, and to close your case. And you did your job perfectly. That offshore account, it's a trust fund. I can't crack it, but it's not mob money. It's old, clean, local money. She walked out, leaving her drink on the bar. I couldn't breathe. I slipped out the back. The sleet had stopped. The city was quiet, frozen. It was all too neat. Kurtish was about to talk. He had another gun. It was the oldest line in the book. The judge. He was the judge. I went back to the precinct. It was empty, a tomb. I went to the evidence room. I pulled the ballistics from the brewery. The bullet that killed Kurtish. It was a standard issue 9mm, fired from Mark's position. But I'd also pulled the evidence from Kurtish's body. Petrova was right. No second gun. No waistband holster. He had another gun, Eli. He'd lied. My blood turned to ice. My hands were shaking. I wasn't cold. I was terrified. I went to the murder board. Miller, Karras, Grant, Fincher, Kurtish. It was a lie. The whole thing. Isabel's list. Why was Mark on the list? It hit me. She didn't put him on the list as a target. She put him on the list as a suspect. The arresting officer. The one who'd lost the glove. I started over. I didn't look for what was there. I looked for what wasn't. Miller's murder. No witnesses. Perfect shot. How did the killer know Miller's exact routine? Miller was a floater. He didn't have a set patrol. Unless the killer had access to the dispatch logs. Or, unless I pulled the logs. Miller's patrol route was changed that night. A last-minute update. Authorized by Mark. Covering a dark spot. The log read. I thought about Mark at the widow's house. The empathy. The promises. He wasn't comforting a widow. He was managing a loose end. Karras. The IA detective. The rage killing. Petrova was right. It was stage. My alibi for Mark? I was his alibi. We were working late on the Miller case. But Mark had taken a phone call. He was gone for almost 3 hours. Fight with the missus, he'd said, rubbing his neck. He wasn't having a fight. He was committing a murder. He was showering. And Karras's files. Volkov said Karras was a blackmailer. Karras wasn't investigating Volkov. Karras was investigating cops. What if he'd found out that Miller wasn't just skimming, but that his friend Mark was the one who'd recruited him, and then executed him when he got sloppy? Grant, my mentor, the father figure, but he was also Mark's first captain, the man who trained him. What if Grant knew? What if Grant had covered up Mark's first judgment? The Black Rose case. It came back to me. Grant was the lead. He shut me down. Who was the rookie on the scene? Mark. Who lost the key piece of evidence? A bloody glove that let the killer walk. Mark. Grant had covered for him. It wasn't a mistake. It was the origin. The suspect in that case. He'd been found dead a year later. Overdose, the coroner said. I'd bet my badge it was Mark. His first judgment. Fincher, the lawyer. He was the one who'd represented the Black Rose killer. He'd gotten him off on the technicality Mark created. Rosales, the survivor. She was part of the Black Rose team. The bomb was a warning. A failed one. A message. It was all connected. A web of cleansing. The Kurtish file. Mark found it. He'd remembered the name. He'd planted it. He'd built his own patsy. Jinx. Jinx's overdose. Mark knew my sis. He knew Jinx was a liability. Isabel. Mark had pushed the Isabel as killer theory as soon as Kurtish was no longer viable. He was using my ghost against me. The tip. The anonymous tip that led us to the brewery. It was Mark. He was setting the stage. The $50,000 from an offshore account. Petrova said it was old, local money. Mark's wife's family. They had money. Old money, he'd said. He wasn't a killer. He was a purifier. Miller wasn't a saint. He was skimming. Karras was a blackmailer. Grant had covered up a dozen bad shoots in his day, starting with Mark's. Fincher was a corrupt lawyer who let a murderer walk free. Rosales was part of the lie. They were all guilty. And Mark, my partner, my friend, my brother, he was the judge. I didn't call it in. I didn't go to Davis. I just drove. I found him in his backyard. A perfect suburban picture. A white picket fence, kids' bikes on the lawn. He was at the grill, a beer in his hand, a perfect, happy smile on his face. He saw me, and his smile didn't waver. Eli, what are you doing here, man? Come on in, I'll grab you a beer. The wife's just making potato salad. He looked happy, at peace. I stood on the patio. I couldn't move. His kids were playing on a swing set. You didn't have to lie about the gun, Mark, I said. My voice was a dead thing. The smile, it didn't drop. It just changed. It thinned. He was a degenerate, Eli. He was scum. He didn't deserve to live, let alone talk. Like Karras, or Miller, or Grant, or Fincher. He flipped a burger. The sizzle was the loudest sound in the world. They were a cancer, Eli. You know they were. You saw it. You saw it every day, and you just drank your bitter coffee and wrote your reports. You complained about the rot. I cured it. You cured it? You murdered 4 men. And a patsy. You killed Jinx. His eyes flickered at that. Collateral damage. He was a junkie. He wasn't a junkie. I roared. He was a person. And you're a monster. I restored balance, he said, turning to me, his voice rising, his eyes clear and fervent. This wasn't a confession. This was a sermon. I gave them the justice the system was too weak to deliver. Miller was a thief. Karras was an extortionist. Grant was the worst of all. He was the lie. He was the one who knew and did nothing. He let the rot spread. And Fincher was the gear that ground the whole machine. I am a surgeon, Eli. I cut out the disease. And the black rosé? I whispered. His face went hard. That was the day I saw the disease. The day I realized the line we hold is a joke. Grant taught me how to cover it up. I taught myself how to cut it out. And me? I whispered, my hand moving to my hip. What was I? Your alibi? Your cover? You? He set the spatula down. You were my compass, Eli. You were the one good man. The one I knew. The one I knew wouldn't see it, because you couldn't. You're too pure for this world. I did this for you. So you could finally live in a city, in a department, that deserved your loyalty. You used me, I said, the words heavy as lead. I protected you, he countered. From the truth, from the choices I had to make. He looked at his perfect house, his perfect life. This, he said, is what's real. The family, the community. And it was all of it, being poisoned. I stopped the poison. It's over, Mark. His kids ran up. Daddy, is Uncle Eli staying for dinner? Mark looked at me, his eyes empty. He smiled at his son. No, buddy. Uncle Eli. He has to go. Go inside with your mom. I'll be right in. The kids ran off. He looked at me for a long, long time. The setting sun painted him in gold. A suburban god. Yeah, he said, so softly. I guess it is. You're a good detective, Eli. He didn't go for a gun. He didn't run. He just waited. He held out his wrists. He picked up his beer and took a long, slow drink. His wife came to the back door, wiping her hands on an apron. Mark, honey, dinner's ready. She saw the cuffs. She saw my face. The scream she let out. That was the real sound of the city. Not the sirens, not the rain. That was the sound of the pulse stopping. I sit in my car. The rain is back. It's always back. I turned in my partner. I solved the case. I'm a hero. The precinct of shadows is quiet tonight. They're all celebrating. They're all clean. Petrova is the new head of the task force, investigating systemic corruption. She'll probably be captain in a year. She nodded to me this morning. A look of respect. Or was it pity? Davis was forced into early retirement. Volkov sent me a very expensive bottle of scotch to my apartment. The card just said, for the one who found the real rat. I haven't opened it. I'm in my apartment. I'm staring at the Black Rose file. It's finally, truly, closed. Isabel Vance left me one last message. I was wrong. It wasn't about my sister. It was about him. I'm sorry, Elias, for all of it. I poured 2 glasses of Volkov's scotch. One for me, one for the man I thought I knew. I drink mine. I pour his down the drain. They say the line between justice and betrayal is thin. They're wrong. There is non-line. There's just the city, and the shadows, and the rain, washing away everything, except the truth.